trust my judgment, 'cause I'm just 22. My mind just running circles, my heart is out in the rain. I know that this is sudden, but do you feel the same? Do you feel the same? Do you feel that I can't make my mind up? I don't know what to do. I'm trying to be.
Hi everyone, my name is Deyaniracavazos and I'm an LPC-associate from the state of Texas, and I also own my own virtual private practice called Mental Health Services. And so I'm going to be bringing you along for another days in the life of a therapist vlog. I started off my day by going for a walk, and I knew today would be the perfect day to film because I only have one therapy client today. The bulk of my therapy clients ended up scheduling earlier in the week and then toward the end of the week. And I'm going to start reading Decolonizing trauma work, so you're going to get to see me read through this, review it for you all in this video, and share my thoughts on it. And so because I have my client right now at 1 p.m, I thought I would give you all some updates on my private practice and how all of that is going. So something that I decided to do for the month of February was take time off from creating and posting content over on Instagram and TikTok. And my main reason for doing that is because my goal when first marketing my practice was not to continue to bust out content at the same rate that I was when I first started. Now that I'm officially not taking on new clients and I'm doing that month by month now, depending if slots open up. So today is also going to be a couch work day because it happens to be that time of the month for me, and I cannot bother to sit at a desk right now, which is why I also love being able to work from home, because I definitely am the type of person who loves to change my settings. So sometimes work at my kitchen table, sometimes work in my office. So I'm going to be working on documentations. I'm also going to be sending one of my clients homework. I'll go ahead and talk to you all later after I do that and after I have my therapy session.
Plans were always falling. I know you need out sometimes. Head on the glass by traffic lights. Thoughts never felt so blind, so we take off in amazing dive. Driving circles, growing sick of the weather. skies, ride with clouds we're lost in. And we drew this life back when we were falling. I know you need out sometimes, head on the glass by traffic lights.
Okay everyone, so I am pretty much done with my work day. The only thing left to do right now is to meet with my supervisor. It is currently 12:50, so in 10 minutes I have my supervision meeting, and I'm excited because I emailed her as far as to what I wanted to talk about today, and sometimes we have sessions like that where I'll give her updates and we'll talk about certain topics, not just the consultation part as far as updates with my clients. And so I wanted to learn more about being a supervisor, that versus taking on interns in grad school, because I'm very interested to learn more about both, because I really would like to incorporate something like that in the future. You all know I'm very passionate about helping out other students, LPC-associates, and I'm trying to decide if it would be better as an intern in grad school or becoming a supervisor down the line. So I'm definitely going to get her expertise on that and talk about that, and I'm excited to hear my supervisor's story and her thinking behind that too. And right now I'm pretty much playing matchmaker as a therapist, because I'm trying to create a referral list for a client right now, trying to find a therapist who would be a really good fit for their parent. So I'm trying to go ahead and reach out to colleagues and friends and seeing if it's something that they'd be interested in, and I'm creating a list for that. So that's a lot of the back end work that also happens as a therapist aside from our notes, and you get to decide how involved you want to be with something like that. But I do like being involved in things like that, because even with the population that I work with, we're gonna really get into these conversations. When I think of who I want to be as a therapist, what I want to be known for in the field with other clients, not necessarily with other colleagues, but with other clients especially, I want to be like the person that my dad goes to get his car fixed. It is a friend that he's had since he grew up in Mexico. It's someone that we know and trust. Like if our car breaks down, we go to him. There's no one else who we go to. There's trust there. Culturally, there's trust there. And so when I think of the kind of therapist that I want to be, that's what I want to be known for. I want to be known as the person who's trusted, who's honest, you know, who gives a referral, really considering clients' personalities and who they might be a good fit with and what their needs are, and just being that trustworthy go-to person. That's something that's very important to me, to be within my community and within my culture, seen as that, because it's why I got into the field to begin with. And so that is something that I'm putting together right now. So I'm playing matchmaker and reaching out to one of my therapist friends. So yeah, I thought I would share this part because I don't think I've shared these little things, and that's what I like about this specific video that I'm sharing with you, that I'm just capturing all these different moments throughout the month so you can see the back end aspects of being a therapist too. So I'm gonna keep doing that, and then I'm gonna meet with my supervisor. So I will talk to you all later because I'm so excited. After this, I'm gonna take a mental break, hang out with my sister, go to Barnes & Noble, and then when I get back later today, we'll probably talk about the book, and if not tomorrow. I'm excited. Hi everyone, so today is Wednesday, March 8th. It's been a couple weeks since I last vlogged or talked about anything. I have had some busy days. I've also had some days where I've just taken off of work and I've enjoyed life, which is really great. I love that about being in private practice. And so a really exciting update is that I have officially closed off my practice to accepting new clients, and it's something that I'm going to be updating on a monthly basis if I have any openings. But I have reached my count of an ideal client schedule, and even then some clients might be gradually spacing out, because clients will always be transitioning into spacing out sessions or, you know, ending therapy sessions. And I personally like taking breaks from accepting new clients and having that kind of flow coming in, because that takes its own kind of mental energy. So I feel good because for the past 2 to 3 months, I've already seen that things have stayed very consistent, stayed pretty steady within the range that I feel comfortable of seeing anywhere between 6 to 12 clients a week. And so far right now, it's actually 9 to 12 clients a week. So perfect for me. I feel really happy with that, because one of the things that I also prioritize is time for my own self-care and just enjoyment. I love getting to have time for the things that I love doing when I'm not being a therapist and doing that kind of work. And so for today, I actually have a consultation with one of you, which is so exciting. So I'm going to be talking about how to start private practice as an LPC associate with this consultation client. And I have already sent over some resources and emails, and I like to send that before a session. That way, as a consultation client, you're able to look through it and have a sense of what we're going to be talking about in the session. And some other things that I ended up sending were also like a sample of my intake form to give you an idea, because these are all, you know, things that I wondered about when I was starting my private practice, and even before then, just working for someone else. I sent over some resources for treatment planning, and of course, the checklist and guide that I send to all of my consultation clients who are thinking of doing private practice. And it actually worked out where my therapy clients ended up booking earlier in the week and toward the end. Wednesday has been that weird toss-up day where sometimes it's busy, but sometimes it's not. And that just happens to be this time around. So I'm going to still have a work day and utilize that time. So I'm going to be continuing with reading the book that you all saw earlier. I'm also going to be editing a video to have up for you all, so you're going to see that before you end up seeing this. Good morning, everyone. Today is March 10th and it is really early in the morning. It's almost 9 a.m. I've been up since 6:30 getting ready for work. And my morning started off earlier today at 9 a.m. because I have a consultation with the fellow LPC associate who's planning on doing private practice. And then I have a therapy session with one of my clients. After that, I have another consultation with a therapist in training, grad student, and then I have my supervision, and that's going to be the end of my work day. So I've been prepping this morning for the consultations that I'm going to have. When they sign up on Calendly, they're able to add in questions that they have, so that way I know what to go off of in our sessions together and in our meetings together. So I usually copy paste that into a separate Word document. That way I have something to go off of during our meeting. And if I have any resources or a checklist or a guide that I want to send them, I can do that beforehand. That way they can have that and we can go over it. Just wanted to update you all on what my day is going to be looking like. After my work day is done, I'm going to go ahead and hang out with my younger sister. We're going to spend some time together, and it's going to be a nice opportunity for me to check out of work and go do some self-care.
Feels like I've been gone on the lawn. And your hand-me-down car feels so far away. All that I say, all that I do, I'm over the moon, thinking of you.
Hi everyone, so today is Monday and I thought we could go ahead and finish up this video by finally reviewing this book. As therapists in training, I know that continuing education can be pricey, so I really enjoy getting to read books for you all, reviewing them to see if it's something that you might enjoy or would rather pass on and read something else instead. So let's go ahead and get into talking about this book. Okay everyone, so Decolonizing Trauma Work discusses how various Indigenous healthcare professionals are incorporating Indigenous healing techniques techniques regarding holistic health and wellness. There's information regarding critiques on Western techniques, approaches that have been hurtful due to them being based on colonization. And so what I read is that this author's intention with this book is for it to be an educational resource for other healthcare practitioners that are working with Indigenous people. And so something that I really liked that was touched in this book was that psychiatry and psychology as a whole, there's nothing that they can truly do to be 100% decolonized, but it is important and steps can be taken to start decolonizing that work by acknowledging what has happened. So it definitely touches on a lot of history and how Indigenous folks have been hurt, and a lot of it is more centered to the Indigenous folks located in Canada, but there are also some mentions of Mexico as well. And so one of the things that I personally would have really liked is for there to have been more interviewers from different regions in Mexico, but I can also acknowledge that the fact that this book even exists with the little amount of support that Indigenous folks are given, I think it was even amazing that one's perspective was able to be shared in here. But let's go ahead and get into the table of contents so I can share with you the main points that this book touches on. So first is the prologue. In this section, the author really shares her story, what she's encountered as an Indigenous woman, and it is very heartbreaking, to read her story, what her community went through. You will definitely be learning a lot of history, and if your program didn't really tend to touch on things like this, highly recommend it. And so part 1 touches on colonialism, Indigenous trauma and healing. Part 2, Indigenous healthcare practitioners join the circle, and so there's different healthcare practitioners that are interviewed. Part 3, Indigenous perspectives on wellness and holistic healing. Part 4, psychiatry and Indigenous peoples. Part 5, Indigenous strategies for helping and healing. Part 6, a decolonizing journey. And so personally, some of my favorite sections were Part 2, the Indigenous healthcare practitioners join the circle. Part 4, psychiatry and Indigenous peoples, and Part 5, Indigenous strategies for helping and healing. Those are definitely some of my favorite areas. I highlighted so much within this book. I will show you. So I definitely tabbed and highlighted quite a bit. So now I'll go ahead and share some of the quotes and passages, information that I highlighted that I found to be really helpful for myself, and I really enjoyed these topics of conversation. So first off is page 18 and 20. It reads here, "It is also clear to me that those who do trauma work need to recognize the intense effect it has on them. This is a difficult task because many of us are immersed not only in the trauma that exists in the community, but also in the trauma that exists in our families. And for Indigenous families, this trauma seems to be continually unfolding in various ways." And so it talks about the importance of the healer, right? The helpers, you and I, really taking time to restore ourselves. As I read through the whole book, a lot of what I do with my own therapy clients was very much validated for me as far as the approaches I take with them. And it's something that I've talked with my supervisor about, who is also Latina woman, identifies as Mexican American, and us talking about how I adjust my approaches and tailor my approaches to fit my clients. So reading how these Indigenous approaches are taken was very validating for me. And so on page 20 it says, "As a direct result of colonization, the vast majority of Indigenous people have lived or are living in trauma. In most cases, this trauma is multi-generational and is relentlessly being reproduced and reinvented in various forms. It is widely recognized that Indigenous peoples are often not well served by Western treatment styles, and those seeking help are often confronted with more alienation and traumatization," which is something that I have found to be very true. And I'm talking high rates of the clients that I work with have a story of not being treated well when they've gone to seek out therapy services by a non-Latina therapist who has not done the work and really knowing the history. How can you help if you don't at least know to some level its history and how this community has been affected in this country and in other countries? Because, for example, for those of us who are Latina, specifically speaking for me, because we're not a monolith, Mexican American, if you know this part of history, Mexico was colonized by Spain. So not only are you dealing with colonization and intergenerational trauma from that colonization that has continued to trickle down over generations, to the point where so many of us might ask, where does this come from? where does this saying come from? Where are these unhealthy or hurtful patterns coming from? And it's something that is a trauma response by so many of our families because of things that have been continually passed down. And then you get down to maybe someone from my generation or even younger, confused as to why our families are reacting the way that they are. And I love how this book touches on that specifically, how intergenerational trauma works, because that has to do a lot with the work that I do as well. And also how Mexican Americans or even Latina folks as a whole and other communities of color are treated in America, and in the history that continually is trying to be erased. It's important to be knowledgeable on that and to recognize that and be aware of it. And if you do recognize it, that means that you have to tailor your approach. And going back to what I originally said, the fact that so many of my clients are coming in with these horror stories or just stories of their lacking a connection with their therapist because they cannot understand their culture. And this is a hard topic because I know some of you have reached out to me who are not Latina, or even more so are not a POC therapist wanting to work with the culture. And so it is a very hard topic that I also love that this book touches on, that you still need to be informed about these things. There is such a high need and not enough counselors or therapists to meet those needs, sadly, and especially with how hard it is for POC therapists, counselors in training to even make it to the field and then graduate and work through it. It is such an obstacle course and filled with so many barriers. There also isn't a lot of transparency within this field. So a lot of the people in our community are wondering, why aren't there more therapists that look like us? And so I know something that's been really important for me too is trying to also talk about that, on social media with people in my community, letting them know, hey, this is what it takes for us to even become therapists, so they can also be aware of how important we see mental health and how important we see them and our communities are. And so truly, I don't think that you can teach everything, when it comes to the culture. I am continually also learning, but it is hard because this is a personal opinion as a therapist that I'm about to share right now. I think that there are some things that you don't have to live and experience as a therapist to help your client, but I think with something as nuanced as culture, you really need to be immersed in it, not just learn about it, but immersed in it, be out in the community, be willing to unlearn and to learn and to listen and to not count yourself as an expert just because you have a degree. Because even for me, I may be a part of the culture, but if I'm working with a client who is, let's say, Colombian, I still understand what it's like to be a part of a collective culture because I am a part of that culture. It's not something that can really be taught. You have to be a part of it to know what it physically feels like and emotionally feels like to really break ties with something that can be as difficult as that if you need to, versus just telling a client in session, oh, just cut off your family. That's what would be healthy for you. You can't just say that. You cannot just say that. It's something that has to be worded with care, has to be explored with care, and has to be really done with empathy. And for me as a therapist who is also Mexican American, I incorporate a lot of humor in my therapy with clients because that is a cultural strength of ours. So that is something that I welcome. A lot of my clients also have horror stories where a therapist will sit with them and judge their humor or will misinterpret it and will jump into pathologizing it. So, it's not just about your degree. It's definitely really getting immersed in the culture if you're trying to help that specific cultural group. Page 22, trauma is not a disorder, but a reaction to a kind of wound. It is a reaction to a profoundly injurious events and situations in the real world, and indeed a world in which people are routinely wounded. Trauma is also intergenerational and multi-generational. It is cumulative, emotional, and psychological wounding over time that is transmitted from one generation to the next, which is what I was talking about. A lot of the work that I do with clients is regarding intergenerational trauma or multi-generational trauma. And for me, it's definitely a lot more intergenerational because, like I said, a lot of history is missing for so many of us. A lot of our history has been passed down orally and wasn't really recorded for many of our families. As many as 3 to 5 generations removed from externally induced trauma, the great-grandchildren of those who were originally traumatized by parents of historical events and are now being traumatized by patterns that continue to be recycled in the families and communities of today. Intergenerational trauma is passed from one generation to the next behaviorally and observationally. Ross explains that some Indigenous leaders seemed more willing to be open about the dire situation of facing their communities once the dialogue shifted to talking about traumatized families instead of dysfunctional families. That's something that you hear thrown around a lot when it relates to trauma is dysfunctional families, and something that really resonated with me in my grad school program was learning person first language. So for example, I would never write something like dysfunctional family. I would write a family who has been traumatized. And it can be really hard on social media when creating content to do something like this because you're trying to create something a lot shorter, but I think it is worth really exploring and looking into utilizing that person first language. For example, instead of saying schizophrenic, you would say something like someone who has schizophrenia. To always take the stance and remind them and society as well as a whole that a person comes first. They are a person, a human first, and schizophrenia is something that they have, not who they are. And so I think it's important for all of us, regardless of what program we come to really sit with those things and to truly take the oath to not cause our clients harm. Seriously, it's very important and very needed. Indigenous people have protective factors that increase resiliency, including family networks, generational relationships, community support systems, cultural and spiritual resources, and a shared collective history that bonds people together and creates a sense of belonging. Humor is also recognized as a demonstration of resilience. The ability to laugh and learn from challenges is a reminder that good things can come out of negative situations. I am actually thinking of creating a post or a reel having to do with this, so I definitely have this page all highlighted because it's definitely an area that's lacking on social media that I've noticed where a lot of therapists, and again, no hate because we're coming from these systems and these academic settings that teach us these things that are based off of Western approaches. So I've seen that there really is a lack of this kind of information. Page 79 reads, I think our people have struggled and suffered for so long that many of them don't know wellness. It is almost a foreign concept to them. I think it is slowly starting to change. When more of our people get educated and teach our children and grandchildren, then we can focus on the positives. Then we can remember who we are and where we come from. Again, that connecting clients back to their culture and their cultural strengths is very important. With my own clients, something that I'm trying to focus on also is the strengths that we have culturally and tying that back into seeing the good things, that we have inherited from our parents, from our ancestors, and the things that we're trying to maybe break away from that have caused us trauma or that have caused us hurt. So being able to see both things. And so a topic that I'm really focused on right now too is both the unspoken and spoken things that our families have touched on regarding mental health, where maybe our families growing up didn't call it mental health. They called it something else, and they taught us how to care for ourselves in different ways. So really trying to make those connections. So in this portion of the book, there's a healthcare practitioner talking about how important it is to present diagnoses. And so they're saying that they try to tell their clients, this isn't what you have, it's more how I see things. So it's a very different kind of approach. Sometimes diagnoses were helpful if individuals and families were able to access other supports. And so it really touches on the differences of when a diagnosis can be helpful, when it's not. So my approach within the therapy that I do with my clients is I am honest and open with clients, and I try to ask them how they view a diagnosis. What are their thoughts on it? Because sometimes a client might come in and they're not really looking to focus on that. And for other clients, they might come in after seeing so many therapists and going through so much that they really just want a name to what is happening with them. I explained that this is a way for us medically to be able to describe what is happening, but it is not who they are. And there are also some cases where it benefits a client of mine to be able to have a diagnosis so they can get accommodations through their university. And that is a whole topic of its own that is covered in this book that I really loved and enjoyed, because before I had access to this book, thankfully I was taught these things from other mental health care practitioners locally where I went to intern with and where I got my practicum experiences with. These were things that they brought up. And so there's so many more quotes that I could read to you from this book because there was a lot of really good information. And what I will say is that I will go off of my own experience. So if I were still in grad school or that first year when I was working with someone else, didn't have the funds or the money to be able to just buy any book, then I think I wouldn't have bought this book or would have held off on it. And now that I do have a budget in place and money to be able to purchase this, I'm glad that I did. It was very validating for me, and I got to learn more about another Indigenous community's experience. Native American or natives was more of the focus. So if you see yourself working with Indigenous communities in that way, I think that this book is very much worth purchasing. I think it's also worth it if you're just interested in these topics and you want to learn more about it. But if you're on a budget and you're thinking, well, these aren't really topics that interest me right now. I also don't want to give this a star rating because it also felt a little bit like a memoir where the author really shared a lot of her story, and rating something like that just feels really weird to me. But I did go in maybe hoping and thinking that there would be more information regarding my community and my culture as well. And I could still see the correlations between a lot of things. So it was still worth it to me, but just want to let you know the ins and outs, so that way you can make the best informed decision for yourself on whether this book is worth for you to purchase or not. And that is it for this book review and for this video, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed watching. If you're new to my channel, definitely consider subscribing, liking this video if you liked it, commenting. All of these things help support my channel so that I can keep creating videos for you all. Definitely stay tuned because there are many more books that I have in store to read for you all. If you haven't watched one of my latest videos where I did a huge book haul for you all, I'm going to be going through all of those books and doing reviews in my vlogs, because one of the next books that I have picked out is actually The Sugar Jar, which got the second highest vote. I promise you all are not shouting out to the void. I saw that so many of you also wanted me to read this book, so it's next. I have actually already started reading it, but I won't spoil anything. What I will say is that I am really enjoying it so much. Take care, everyone. I will go ahead and see you in my next video. Bye.